Now, as the one-week suspension of the nationwide strike by organized labor expires today, the leadership of the trade unions have appealed to President Bola Tinubu to use his position to give the Nigerian workers a deserved living wage. This was as the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry urged all parties in the ongoing negotiation to consider an amount that would reflect a good balance of economic realities, affordability, and sustainability. Equally, the Nigeria Governors Forum has called on the federal government to gradually stop the payment of electricity subsidies, saying that it is ineffective. The organized labor is expected to convene its organ meeting tomorrow on the matter. Now, speaking to newsmen on arrival in Geneva for the annual conference of the International Labour Organization, NLC President Joe Ajero said that having submitted its demand to the president through National Minimum Wage Tripartite Committee, the expectation of the workers was for him to consult widely and pronounce a minimum wage that would fill the wide income gap created by the economic downturn. Now, of course, this conversation continues and continues and continues.
Okay, Vimbai, let's get it straight. So, I don't know why Ajero and his team is in Switzerland, where you have a very important negotiation. I know, they've concluded their tripartite and all of that meeting, and they've sent it to the president, and it's for the president to make his decision. But I still feel they should be on ground. They should be on ground to be able to marshal out a reaction if whatever the president says is in or not in their favor. This idea of speaking from Switzerland at the time, they might have pre-booked that meeting. I don't have that. But it sounds very iffy to me, if I can use the word. That's number one. Number two, what Ajero pretty much was saying yesterday, that they've put forward two positions. Their position is 250,000. That of the government negotiation team at the tripartite committee is 62,000. So it's for the president to be able to make a decision. And it's incumbent on the president to make the decision now. He also said they're not going to go on strike. They're going to wait for the decision to be made. Yes, we understand that because, let the decision be made. He also talked about the fact that it could go in their favor, it could not go in their favor, so they will go back to their organs and be able to plan. Truth is, they also cited the case of Buhari, that in fact it was 27,000 that were agreed upon at the time of Buhari, but he decided to make it 30,000 for them, which was an extension of goodwill. But pretty much with all the arguments, I doubt that would be the case. There was another story that came out on Daily Trust that was talking about the fact that Labour was saying, we're not going to do a 100,000 deal. So how are they going to meet halfway? Is this negotiation going to continue at some point? We're all waiting for the president to be able to make a determination on that. But also, those speaking in terms of the private sector and the LCR has also been saying that apart from all of this, they should also reach a compromise that's in tandem with reality. And we get the argument that the private sector, organized private sector, might not be able to pay that money because there's lack of productivity and all of that, and the overall general malaise of the state of the Nigerian economy as we speak. But also, I get this advanced arguments being made forward. But it also behoves on the government to be able to make something judicious available. Then the case was also made for productivity of the labor force. And this is a conversation I broached on yesterday. That after all this talk about minimum wage, we have to now look at how we can retune our labor force to be more productive, to be able to bring about more productivity in the economy. But one way to doing that is also increasing the threshold of disposable income. Because if you don't increase the threshold of disposable income at a time where they're already paying a tax of inflation, a tax on standard of living, a tax on everything. Take, for instance, look at the price of tomato in the market. So they're already paying a hardship tax while the lawmakers are getting a hardship allowance. Then it becomes problematic. So, but the labor to us to look at the conversation on productivity. We can't have a country where members of the labor force are not just productive. We need to be able to fix the encumbrance issues around ghost workers. We need to be able to look at appropriately those that are working and those that are getting remuneration. These are the conversations we should have. But all of this falls on the purview of the president. He needs to make a decision quickly so that we can get to the end of this conversation once and for all and look forward to a more productive society where people have some decent level of wage. And for the state governors that are saying, yes, they will not be able to meet this because of their budget encumbrance and all of that, I think they're being hypocritical. The Southwest governors, for instance, are talking about creating state police. So you can afford to look at state police and look at the possibilities of paying for it. but you cannot pay 62,000 because you are not productive. Nobody's going to teach you productivity. Nobody's going to teach you how to increase IGR. Nobody's going to teach you how to look at your workforce and make it fit for purpose. It is your job as a state governor to be able to do that. And there are many things for you to be able to make money on. In fact, the NERC is making it possible now for an electricity market based on the hitherto recommendations in your state. So each state is going to have an electricity energy, market to be able to tap in from. They are rich resource. Most of these states are replete with land or minerals. Also, there are services that can be provided in these states. So you need to be able to come up with the money and stop this argument of we cannot pay, because anyway, you guys go cap in hand to go beg from the federal purse. That's why we talk about federalism. Everybody should carry their cross.
Okay, Joe Ajaero, the president of the NLC, went to Switzerland, Geneva, Switzerland, for the annual general meeting of the International Labour Organization, which I think is, routine responsibility of labor leaders to show up at that annual general meeting. The ILO is the umbrella body for labor issues globally, trying to ensure, that workers' rights are respected and that there's dignity of labor. It was on the sidelines of that ILO, annual general meeting that he spoke to a number of select journalists. And he made the point that, one, labor, although the deadline given to the federal government of Nigeria, the relaxation of the strike that they had called previously, that they are not going to go on strike today, even as the deadline expires. For what reason? That, well, they've submitted their proposals, to the president. At the moment, they're asking for 250,000 naira. The federal government is saying it can only afford 62,000 naira. And we have been reliably informed that the chairman of that 37-person tripartite committee which the president set up in January 2024 has already submitted his report to the secretary to the government of the federation, and it will go to the president. So Ajaero's point simply is that they cannot go on strike. Let them wait first to see the decision that is taken by the president. In other words, on the question of the national minimum wage, the ball is now in the court of the president, and not a very good position to be, because whatever happens, the president will be blamed that, oh, he was the one that took the decision, because that's how they are phrasing the negotiation now. Now, at the back of that, Joe Ajaero also made the point that he thinks that the gap between 62,000 naira and the 250,000 naira that they are asking for is too much of a gap, that in fact is not a margin, it's a gulf, according to him. Now, the Constitution of Nigeria, Section 16 thereof, says, among other things, that, look, the government of Nigeria will pay, in addition to pensions, looking after the workforce, what he calls reasonable minimum living wage. Section 16, dealing with economic conditions in the 1999 Constitution. President Tinubu himself has had cause to say, look, he will pay a living wage. Where we are now in this conversation is what constitutes living wage, in line with Section 16 and in line also with the president's own promise. The second point that Joe Ajaero made is that some states cannot say they cannot pay, that they cannot talk about decentralization of wages within the context in which the conversation is going on. And that in any case, those governors who are saying they cannot pay, how come Edo State is able to pay 70,000 naira, and that what they need to do is to cut their own conspicuous consumption? The third point on this subject is that organized labor has now announced that it will meet either today or tomorrow to take another look. And I think this day newspaper this morning reported that Joe Ajaero is back in the country. So whether they meet today or they meet tomorrow, we'll see what the developments are. The other angle to the story is the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, through Dr. Almona, who is the Director General, saying that whatever is decided upon must look at economic realities, must be affordable, and must be sustainable. Because in the view of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in a press release that they issued yesterday, that the big issue is about productivity, particularly for the workers. Okay, you may get money that is affordable, that the states have the capacity to say, but how do we address the challenge of productivity? And we said it ad nauseam on this platform, that look, productivity is very important. Was it last week? I was quoting Kingsley Mogado, who waded into the matter, and he was talking about, look, this economy has to become productive, and that we should not just be talking about wages only. If there is productivity, he believes that there will be opportunities for wealth creation, for prosperity within the economy. But at the end of the day, I think the matter will come to the capacity of the states to pay. Many of the state governors have already said that they won't be able to pay, so they can't pay. And we've been told that only just about 10 states have the capacity. These 10 states include Ogun, Lagos, Cross River, Rivers, Kano, Kaduna. These are, Akwa Ibom is also on that list. Out of 36 states, only 10 were told have the capacity to pay. So I don't think that the matter is over yet. The thing that should not happen, that government must do everything to prevent, is another round of strikes. The 2-day strike that we had a week ago, from the calculations made by the experts, resulted in a loss of 11 trillion naira to the economy. This is an economy that is, struggling with a lot of uncertainty. Everything must be done, not to compound the situation and not to, make life more difficult for Nigerians. But hopefully, good reason will prevail on all sides. This is a moment that calls for common sense. This is a moment that calls for good reason. And I think all the parties involved should not, dig into the trenches and say there is no room for negotiations. There is nothing that dialogue cannot solve.
Right. Now, excuse me, off the back of this conversation, is the Nigeria Governors Forum also making a recommendation that the states need to start looking into reducing electricity subsidy gradually, which is an unfortunate time to bring in this conversation when we're looking at bread and butter issues. We've all been to the markets. We are all living in this economy. It is no longer affordable to even be poor. There are no substitutes. There's a clamor for, people should substitute their food basket with this and that. What do you substitute tomatoes with? What do you substitute pepper with? These are the basics that people are now foregoing. So to start a conversation about removing subsidy, at some point we need to prioritize having a human face over market forces. There will be no market if people are not taken care of. And this conversation is now coming down to the good faith, the goodwill that the president will show. Now, the numbers between 62,000 and 250,000, there's still a long way to come to meet a median number. However, a great sign of good faith right now will be to address inequality. Because a part of the problem here is the fact that those at the lowest of the food chain are looking at those at the top. And they're saying, but you say there's no money. You say that the states cannot afford it. You say that the budgets cannot afford it. However, like Rufai said, you have a hardship allowance. Nobody is factoring in our own hardship. So at this point, this would be the right time for us to start making moves, to start looking at fiscal discipline, to start making budget cuts. Are all these new vehicles necessary? Is this excessive spending necessary? Is this time for us to be launching the home of a new vice president? There needs to be a human face to all that is being done in aspect to this minimum wage negotiation as we wait to hear what the final position is and we wait to see what the final action Labour will take. Now, in our next story, a group of House of Representatives lawmakers have proposed amendments to the 1999 Constitution, including a 6-year tenure for the president and the 36 state governors. The group, led by Ikenga Ugochinyere, is also calling for the creation of offices for 2 vice presidents, one from the southern region and the other from the country's northern region. The lawmakers also proposed an amendment on the Electoral Act 2022 to ensure that all governorship elections are held on the same day. They say these proposals will reduce the cost of governance, unite the country, and tackle nepotism and corruption in electoral processes.
A single tenure of 6 years rotation of power between North and South and among the geopolitical zones and the senatorial zones for the governorship. And also single tenure for the presidency and single tenure for the governorship 6 years, removing the billions we spend in re-election and the uncertainty it brings to our electoral process, plus the corruption it also brings. And also, we are seeking for all elections to be conducted in one day, reducing the cost of conducting election, getting more citizens involved on election day, and reducing to the barest minimum the possibility of rigging, because you will have those interested in the presidency, in the governorship, in the state assembly, in the national assembly, in the local government, all turning up to vote for their different candidates. Each of the polling units will be populated, and that can help to provide a lot of defense.
Those of us from Kogi State and Benue State, for example, knows what is happening in our states, if not by divine intervention. There are people from my own zone and from the Kogi Central that we were able to have it after 16 or so years from the other senatorial district. I'm sure those of you from Benue State know what is happening. If this can be accepted and adopted in the new coming constitution that is being proposed, the reviewed constitution, it will bring harmony and more development to those states.
Security and inclusiveness of all of us. You also will agree that at different times our interests could differ. Some persons would want to travel home because they have a candidate who wants to contest for probably the House of Assembly. And the other elections won't have anything to do with them, they don't bother. So if you aggregate diverse interests, you would find out that voter turnout would definitely improve.
We want to ensure that all potential of young people is utilized. That is by providing opportunity for a rotation from the presidency to the governorship and to local government election. Given this full participation, you will understand that people will have roles to play at different levels.
All right, well, you heard it there from our lawmakers. Rufai, these are the issues.
I mean, so the raft of things they put out there, which is like a combination of many bills put forward, the Namani electoral reforms report, the Ways electoral reforms report, and a couple of, and I think also the Enrosso report. You know, so it's like a melanging of most of these reports together, and there are many bills there. Quickly, the very first one, the big one, the headlining one, is the 6-year, you know, rotational presidency. For me, I would suggest that they should even reduce the term 6 years, because you see, in the end, anybody, what you can do in 4 years, I don't think you do it in 6 years. Probably we could haggle back and forth and make it a 5-year limit or something. But I like the idea that you just do your term and you go. And I hope in the future no president will try to run for a third term again. Secondly, as regards the electoral law, I also subscribe to what they talked about, that we must conclude all the electoral cases before the elections. In fact, they gave a 6-month threshold after completion of the election to the swearing in. I think 6 months is a little bit long. I think Kenya did theirs in about 2 weeks or thereabout, or to a month threshold. So if we can reduce the 6 months term, but I also subscribe to that, you know, let's complete all the electoral cases, because once the president is sworn in, he has all the powers. So I subscribe to that. Also, the fact that, yes, let's uphold the rights of the local government, that if any, leader, a governor of a state is found wanting, giving the due allocation to the local government. Anyway, there's a case in court already as regards that. The Attorney General is saying that the state governor should file in their cases, that they should be allowed, that money should be taken away from their FAC revenue. I mean, I subscribe to that, because we must be able to uphold the local government, because I've seen the findings of the local government, and I have an historical past with the local government. My father served as a councillor of, you know, Odogbolu town, you know, Odogbolu local government, which was a broader local government. He also served as supervisor at Greek in the early 90s. So I saw the effect of the local government working and how close it is to the people. Thirdly or fourthly now, I also subscribe to the conversation around, you know, yes, having 2 vice presidents. No, I don't subscribe to that conversation. The first vice president and the second vice president. I think it's just going to be, number one, increase of bureaucracy, because you're going to have the office of the first and second vice president, and it's also going to cost us more, because I know the antecedents. So take, for instance, if we just spent 21 billion to build the office of the first, the vice president, are we going to build 2 offices of the vice president or 2 houses of the vice president? And this idea of to be able to balance the regional equation, or what will come from, the part where the president is from, or the south. What we've seen in our democracy too much is that the president is very powerful. He normally will usurp the powers of, the vice president, and they'll just be, second-class fiddle to him in the end. But I think what should be done is how we can whittle down the power of the president. I keep saying the president of Nigeria is too powerful. How we can whittle down that power and push it across the regions, as like we did largely in the Constitution and the Republican Constitution of the early 60s, which was pretty much the order of day that the regions were powerful. I think that's what we should look at. Also, we should give it with checks and balances.
Okay, a group of lawmakers in the House of Representatives, 30 of them, under the umbrella of what they call reform-minded legislators, say that they are proposing a total of about 50 bills. These 50 bills to focus on economic development, stability, to correct, issues within the Nigerian space, and to focus more on good governance. But that they were going to unveil 6 proposals, 6 of the bills out of 50. And that is what, they have tried to do. Number 1, they want an amendment of Section 3 of the 1999 Constitution to make room for 6 geopolitical zones, and to say that, look, these 6 geopolitical zones, again, would rotate power, one after the other. Now, I guess the objective of that is to give every part of the country a sense of inclusion. Although politically, we talk about the 6 geopolitical zones, this is not written into the Constitution. That's one of the things they are asking for. They're also saying that there should be a creation of the office of 2 vice presidents. The first vice president will come from the same zone as the president. And if anything happens to the president, that first vice president will be the one to succeed him. And the second vice president will come from another part of the country, not south, they're talking about. And that second vice president will be in charge of administration and the economy, but he will not have the right of automatic succession in the event that, the president is unable to continue. Well, that may be problematic, because once you cast it as north and south, there could be a lot of controversies. They're also talking about financial autonomy of local governments. Well, the whole idea is specifically to make sure that these state joint local government accounts, which the state governments use to cheat the local governments, that section is reviewed, and that resources can go directly to the local council, so that they have financial autonomy. They're also asking for an amendment of Section 162, of the 1999 Constitution. Section 162 deals with the allocation of resources, sharing formula, how resources are shared among the various federating units. And then they talked about electoral reforms. What are some of the interesting electoral reforms that they say they are looking for? All elections to be held on the same day, both presidential, National Assembly, state. Well, again, the problem with that will be capacity of the Electoral Commission, the logistical problems that will be involved. Even in the staggered formula format that we have at the moment, INEC, is always talking about glitches, late arrival of materials, but that's their proposal. And then, of course, they're saying that all disputes relating to elections must be determined before the swearing in of anyone. Well, that is one of the major recommendations by the Waste Commission, and also by Ulisa Agbakoba and many others, who are saying that, look, election petitions should be determined as they have in other countries. And then, in any case, they also made a point, derived, it seems to me, from some of the fallouts of the 2023 general election, to wit, that after the election, all the persons who participated in the election who need documents for them to pursue whatever legal cases they have within a period of 6 months have access to those documents. Not the kind of thing that we saw after the 2023 general election, where INEC, was telling stories about access to documents. Finally, the one that I want to dwell upon is their proposal that there should be a single term of 6 years for presidents and governors. Now, that's not an original proposition. In 1986, when the Babangida administration set up the political bureau, it was one of the recommendations at that political bureau. I think it was even proposed also by President then General, Olusegun Obasanjo, that look, as a result of what you saw during the Second Republic, it is better to let a man just spend one term. The proposal then was for 5 years, but the military, in their own wisdom, decided on the standard, more popular 2 terms of 4 years each. Many people do not agree with even the conduct, the idea of that political bureau. That was how we got stuck with this 4 years rotation. Later, the Patriots, the group led by Professor Ben Nwabueze and F.R.A. Williams and others, also proposed a single term. The argument is that, look, when a man does 1 term, he will focus. And all this issue about we want to do a second term in office, already we're saying the Tinubu administration that by next year, there will be no focus on governance because politics will start afresh. But if a man knows that he has just 6 years as president, as governor, then he will do what he has to do within that frame. The counter argument is that, a president or a governor needs 8 years. Well, about performance, it's neither here nor there. After all, some people can lead a country for 1 year and they can make a lot of difference. In 2011, President Goodluck Jonathan proposed to the National Assembly the same idea of a 6-year tenure. At that time, what the government argued for was a single 6-year tenure. And it was part of my assignment at that time to argue, that proposal on behalf of President Jonathan within the public arena. Now, the same people, some of the people now who are going back to that single 6-year tenure, they were the ones abusing us at that time. What was their argument? They even said President Jonathan should give an undertaking that if that law was passed, he will not benefit from it. Even when simple common sense should tell the people making the comment that a law cannot have retroactive effect. But at the end of the day, the opposition was so much, that idea died a burning. It is therefore, in my view, a vindication of the position of President Goodluck Jonathan that in 2024, what others have proposed since 1986 up till 2011 is now back on the table. But it's not a done deal. It will still have to be debated. People will still look at it. Now it is clear that President Jonathan in 2011 was not looking for a way to impose himself on Nigerians, as later developments showed. But I think the conversation is useful, and perhaps the reform-minded legislators will find a lot of support for their proposals within the public arena.
Excuse me, these draft bills are undoubtedly coming from a good place. But as Dr. Abati has gone into in detail, the history, and it's a cycle of history repeating itself. And one worries about dwelling on documents, editing documents, changing documents. Let's look at the spirit in the nation. I'd like to take an example of the just concluded South African election, which saw a voter turnout of 58.5%. Look at the last Nigerian election, which saw just 29% of voters turning out. Perhaps it's time for us to shift our focus from amending the Constitution and get back to getting the buy-in of Nigerians and making Nigerians feel like they are stakeholders in the Constitution. So you may choose to have one presidential term limit of 6 years. You could have 2 vice presidents. You could even have 700 vice presidents to represent all of the local governments. It means nothing if Nigerian citizens don't feel that they are stakeholders, that they have their voice counts, their vote counts in this project called Nigeria. When it comes to the electoral process, it's all in vain if at the end of the day we're speaking of 29% of 200 million people at large, and then of course looking at the voter population, it doesn't make sense. So I think as much as these draft bills are coming from a good place, and as much as this is an important conversation to be had, there certainly is a bigger conversation, and that conversation stems around getting the buy-in, restoring the faith and confidence that Nigerians have in the system, in the constitution, in the fact that this nation will not fail them when they need it most. And I think that's the conversation that needs to be had. Well, finally, on our news stories this morning, last week, L'Oréal Paris announced multi-talented actress, entrepreneur, and global influencer Temi Otedola as the first African digital brand ambassador for their makeup products. Well, L'Oréal Paris unveiled the partnership with Temi Otedola in a press release, stating that the collaboration marked a significant milestone in celebrating beauty in all its forms from across the African continent, and that Otedola was the first ever Nigerian to represent the iconic brand. Well, in reaction to the news, Nigerian international supermodel Oluchi Onueagba Olandi, who came into fashion prominence after winning the Face of Africa competition in 1999, took to Instagram to share a photograph of her L'Oréal campaign with the caption, "First Nigerian remains first forever." While L'Oréal's press release announcing Temi Otedola as the first African digital ambassador has made headlines, the company also stated that Temi will be standing alongside fellow ambassadors, including Kendall Jenner and Viola Davis, and will headline the latest infallible makeup range campaigns. So, several firsts, but in different ways, right?
I mean, so several firsts in this way, but most importantly, I'd like to congratulate Temi Otedola. I mean, very sparkling one. We've seen that trajectory. I think Ayo cited, you know, sort of like her role in the citation movie, no pun intended, yesterday, and all she has done over the years, and how she has been, you know, an active player in the fashion industry, also music and all of that. I mean, the Otedola kids definitely have done sparkling well, from DJ Copy, you know, that was also made an ambassador to the King's Trust, you know, and all of them, and even their sister Tolani, that also does music, you know. They've done very well in their own right. And for me, it's a case of how these people have done well for Nigeria. Oluchi too has done extremely very well for Nigeria. We know how Oluchi painted this country top in the international scene and all of that. So we'll say kudos to all of them. The most important thing is we can all shine together. And that's just it. And these are all of our shining stars. So congratulations, you know, Temi Otedola on the ambassadorship. And all the Nigerians have done great things, and they will continue to do great things. And it's also a testament to the fact that a bold, strong Nigerian woman is emerging in the fashion scene worldwide. You know, I think it was also Dior, you know, that headline Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, you know, as ambassador for their very chic bag brand and all of that. So all these people are shining in their own way possible. Congratulations, Temi Otedola.
Okay, I don't think that there should be any cause for any controversy. Oluchi Onueagba Olandi became the face of fashion, of modeling, face of Africa at the age of 16. She's now 43. And in her line of business as a model, you know, she has distinguished herself in many ways. She has, you know, modeled for some of the biggest brands in the world, you know, whether it's all the ones that you know. I'm trying to remember the names: Chanel, Herrera, Dior, Tommy Hilfiger, Fendi, you know, Giorgio Armani, Kenzo, and she's done advertising campaigns for many companies too, including L'Oréal, including Victoria's Secret, including Coca-Cola. And, you know, in the process of all of that, you know, she became a role model for aspiring young talents in the whole of Africa. So she's in a class of her own. There is no way in which, you know, Temi Otedola's present achievement, you know, clashes with our own. In fact, as they say, the more, the merrier.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe where the confusion is the statement put out by L'Oréal. L'Oréal said Temi Otedola is the first ever Nigerian to represent their iconic brand. Now, how do you interpret that? If L'Oréal is saying that she's the first ever Nigerian to represent the iconic brand, now, what exactly did, Oluchi what did she do at that time? She was part of the advertising campaign. But I think, another thing here is that L'Oreal also says she is the new African digital ambassador. Now, look at that again. The description is also different, which means that we're dealing with two different things, both worthy of celebration. And they went further in their press statement to describe Temi Otedola as an entrepreneur, a global influencer, and a multi-talented actress. And they put her in the same category with Kendall Jenner and Viola Davis. So which means that, for the tenure of the partnership, they use the word partnership in that press statement, it means that, Temi Otedola will be representing the brand, will be speaking for the brand as different from just an advertising campaign. The emphasis is on the word ambassador. And for that reason, all the accolades that we have showered on her, we are very proud of her. We are proud of the fact that, playthings have become big things, because she said when she was young, she used to play with her mother's L'Oreal makeup. And now, that childhood, playground has become a major thing. But to the extent that, these women, either Oluchi Onwegba or Temi Otedola, have shown that what you can achieve with commitment, with creativity, with, applying yourself, and not just expecting, privileges. I think it's very commendable. And both women, both Oluchi and Temi Otedola, they are role models, in my view, for other young Nigerians, and even every woman, indeed, even for men, even for people like us, all of us. What it means is that every individual can make a difference. Every individual can carve a niche, for himself or herself. So big congratulations to Temi Otedola, and of course, Oluchi Onwegba, who also continues to remain one of the icons. We can have more icons. The more, the merrier.
Absolutely. And, when you look at Oluchi's time, it was a huge time for print. And that's what those campaigns signify. In those times, the magazines were the in thing, the billboards. It was, and she signified, she was the face for that era that signified that. And of course, that's timeless. Now we've come into a digital era, which is a totally different ballgame. But again, the main thing to remember here is how much beauty has evolved over the years. The fact that now we see these beautiful black faces, these beautiful Nigerian faces, and they're being held globally as the faces that represent what it means to be beautiful. So our young girls no longer need to aspire to look like a different race or to look. Our young girls can just be happy to be Nigerian, natural Nigerian girls. And that's what this testifies. So congratulations to Oluchi for all she did in her career. And a huge congratulations to Temi Otedola, who's breaking new ground in the digital space. And we continue to celebrate her and support her as her success will continue to multiply.